Welcome to Capacity Building with the Acosta Institute. My name is Dr. Angel Acosta. I'm not joined today by my special co-hosts, Maria Tan and Josana McDaniel, but their spirit will be in this kind of conversation. I wanted to take just this episode to frame the subsequent episodes that many of you will listen to. Just really exciting. Last year, we launched and hosted a international healing-centered education conference. It was held virtually last December 2024, and we had a stellar cast of speakers exploring the theme of capacity building in times of change. And throughout all those conversations and presentations, we recorded some of those dialogues with just powerhouses, and we wanted to provide the community with access to some of those conversations, exploring capacity building from a variety of different perspectives and fields like leadership, like business, like bias and the science of bias, spirituality, neuroscience, artificial intelligence, beauty, and technology. So what you'll see across the next several episodes are one-on-one conversations with folks like Amy Elizabeth Fox, Darlene Cordero, Tim Lebrecht, Maggie Jackson, her work on uncertainty, Angel Kyodo Williams, and many others. So one of the things that I want to invite you all to settle into is the idea that capacity building is an opportunity for expansion, but also arriving at a sense of groundedness. You might think that those two things might be in contradiction, right? To expand, you almost have to be suspended from a sense of self and be taken, even out of one's comfort zone. And a sense of groundedness is almost like a settled energy and capacity to be within ourselves and within the now, what's happening in the world. But there's something about the paradox of capacity building that is a productive kind of tension between expansion and developing a deeper sense of groundedness. And with that expansion and groundedness, we're able to meet the world in a way that is discerning, that cultivates what my colleagues and I have been discussing as fortitude, developing fortitude. So I think each episode, I want you to sit with the idea of how it expands your understanding of capacity building, and then also how it grounds you, cultivating a profound sense of discernment and fortitude. So enjoy the subsequent episodes, and I'm excited to hear your take, your perspective. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and feel free to reach out to us and let us know what your take is on any of our episodes. With that being said, Dr. Angel Acosta, thank you so much for listening. Welcome, everybody. Angel Acosta here. I am dancing inside because I get a chance to just be in the field, and in relation to dear Reverend Angel Kyodo Williams, someone I've been just a deep fan and almost like a devotee of sorts, Rev. Just watching you just move. You got to remind me of the title of your first book. I know that grace is in it, but just watching you gracefully just lead in the public sphere and allow us to walk with you as you continue to to expand your practice and your vision for how we leverage mindfulness and contemplative practice to transform society has been really inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is that I think then we're kind of like co-devotees because I look and I'm like, look what that brother is doing. Look at what he's doing. And talk about grace. I have actually been in your presence when you have exuded and practiced and like in a moving way, real grace. And so I hope we get to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that inspired me about extending this invitation to you was just in relation to capacity building, and you've been so supportive with the community with inviting to and helping us to practice. And just wanted to ask you around how does contemplative practice, mindfulness practice, I know you have a background in yoga as well and martial arts, but how do those practices allow us to increase our capacity to just hold more,
Yeah.
or at least be more?
Yeah. Say that again.
Yeah, yeah. How does practice allow us to hold more, be more, sense into our inner landscapes?
Yeah. First I want to say and acknowledge that we're always practicing something. So, the thing is like, are they the intentional practices that they're choiceful and they are where their practices toward and into what it is that we're choosing and how we're choosing to be in the world, like how we're choosing to be in the world. There's a lot of who-ness, there's a lot of identity, there's a lot of other things going on. And there's a lot of whatness, like what I'm going to get and what I'm going to do and what I'm going to accomplish and what I'm going to, what. And there's a lot of doing in there, but it's really the how that is the thing that makes the difference. Is by experience, we can get to the same place in very, very different ways. We can create chaos and calamity on the way to some place that seems like it's a good place to go, but we can do it in a way that creates chaos, calamity, as opposed to paving a road with compassion and clarity and a real sense of connection to not just the earth, but also each other, and also, of course, first and foremost, to ourselves. So I think that that's actually what capacity building comes from. It's the intention and putting into practice, into the ways that we are showing up and expanding and pushing into our edges, right? So practice for me is about filling in the edges in terms of, first and foremost, the connection that we have to ourselves. And that can be flipped and people can get, concerned about it's being selfish or that kind of thing. But that orientation comes out of a society that has organized itself around individuality. But when we organize ourselves and we understand a sense of not only mutuality and, in the tradition of Salbona, that I am because you are, or causality, mutuality, like mutual codependence, co-arising. If we understand that, then we don't hold, it's actually impossible to hold that the practices that we do for connection with ourselves and is somehow oppositional to the practice in relationship with others and the practice in relationship with the planet. I really want folks to hear that, because if we get tripped up, we're using the operating instructions of systems of oppression by which to interpret and define the ways that we're trying to do something that's more along the ways towards the liberatory path, more embodied within our bodies. So we can't use the dictionary, the glossary. There's actually a dictionary, and it's called the Buddhist Sanskrit Dictionary. It's like a hyphenated Buddhist derived Sanskrit, because there's actually a whole way, even though Sanskrit has a long language history for those of us that are like practice yoga, and there's here, Sanskrit terms in yoga and Buddhism, so on. There's a whole bunch of words, but those words took on particular meanings when they had their confrontation with Buddhism. And so we have to understand kind of what's the basis of the definitions, how, like by what means are we interpreting the content and of our lives. So let's start with, first of all, reclaiming language that is for us and about us, and reclaiming and situating our language within liberatory language, within a liberatory framework, and not keep trying to have ourselves work up against the language definitions, frameworks of a system that is meant to draw us into confusion, distraction, consumerism, acquisition, competition, all of these kinds of things that then make confusion about the things that we are doing that's intended towards liberation, that's intended towards deeper embodiment. So first, let's just start with that as a baseline, because after many, 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 it feels like a lot of years I've been practicing, I realized, oh, you're still using that definition. So questions people share, they're like, Rev, what about this, or that? And I'm like, oh, I spent a long time trying to respond to those questions. And I was like, oh, okay, let's change the glossary that you're using, right? Let's start with changing the glossary. So we're always practicing something. That's a context. You have to have context. We're always practicing something. So let's not just say practice is always inherently a good thing. People are practicing some really, I'm going to just say bananas for the sake of the banana stuff out there. And that intentional practice for the sake of, and I would say a liberatory path, on a liberatory path, or embodiment, whatever people like to use the language. I use liberation, and I say liberation is about becoming, it's about awareing, aligning, and aliving, right? Meaning active, right? They're active. And like I used to say, becoming aware, aligned, and alive, and then people get fixed in the, right? Like I'm going to get to that, right? So that's what we start with. And we are practicing towards something, toward walking on a liberatory path to become more in our bodies, to expand our capacity. It's not a improvement. It is actually to shed the limitations opposed by systems that wish for limitations upon us, so that we don't feel into the boundlessness that is our true nature. That's it.
Oh God, Jesus, Lord, Vishnu, all of them combined there, yeah, there's just something there around what happens when we feel expansive, and the awareness, the enlivening, that can just be felt there, and the liberatory kind of existence there that can emerge. So thank you for that language. As you know, there's just a lot happening in the world. Just feel like with artificial intelligence ramping up in terms of it being an exponential evolutionary disruption for the entire species, like on some major levels that I'm kind of wrestling with. The political polarization that has gripped the U.S., but also kind of globally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, continued wrestling with the carrying capacity of our consumption and living habits on this earth, and the climate change. Just kind of there's a way that the cluster of generations that are alive right now have to confront just a lot of things. A historian, I think, called it the poly crisis. And so I'm just wondering, thinking about like our practice as healing balm, how any insight, I think you shared already a little bit, any insight on how our practice can help us stay more grounded when so much is coming our way?
Yeah, there's a competing theories, if you will. So first of all, like as human beings, the access to an understanding of what's happening in a global context, and even a national context, is kind of like beyond actually what we were meant for. Let's just start with that, right? We weren't actually designed to take in the sheer volume of information that we're subject to by 24-hour news cycle, by social media, by computers, all of the things. Like we have way too many things coming into our little inbox. We have way too many inboxes, and we have way too many things coming into our many, many, many inboxes. So let's hold that And then on the other hand, we can be stunning sorting machines, right? These clever beings are in relationship with the earth, which understands direct relationship, what needs to be compost. And so it's like I might look at something and it's just a compost. It's like, nah, don't need that. Just don't need that, right? And so we have that on the other hand, that is like we can sort so that the things that actually have a sense of meaning for us, because they're move through our meaning making mechanism, right? We have a meaning making mechanism that allows us to sort and sift for what it is that really matters. And some of that is choiceful, like determining what matters in spite of and in, I want to say, contrast with many of the extrinsic ideas about what ought to matter to us, right? We get more, our practice allows us to get in more touch with what matters to us from our core. Right? And I think of it as like, by whatever name you might want to call it, or however you want to relate, so that I'm following my original operating instructions, right? so that I'm getting my operating system, this operating instructions, the original instructions are coming right through this spirited being. And that's a combination of whatever, deities, gods, goddesses, divines, ancestral learning, understanding, all of the things, the earth, the soil, the plants, by looking at water, looking at the sky, observing it, being in rhythm and relationship. For me, that's what I'm responding to. Like all of that is not separate, but it's actually coming through. And practice allows us, and the way that I say it is, to get still enough to feel ourselves and quiet enough to hear ourselves. When that happens, right, embodied practice, meaning to actually cut with the habit formation of being out of our bodies, right, to be out of ourselves. We don't need new information. We're returning to our intrinsic knowing. That is not my individual knowing. It's an intrinsic, collective, planetary, universal meaning, like all cosmic knowing that comes in, or, brass tacks, practical knowing. You do that too. You're like, what's with the cosmos? You just come on right down like the brass tacks, practical knowing that comes out of your gut. Yeah. Yeah. And so when we have practice, so that I'm going to say of the many practices we have embodied practice, it's about getting still enough to feel ourselves and quiet enough to hear ourselves. And then we begin to get in tune with who and what we're really taking in. And it helps us to separate, right? It helps to separate the things. Then we have less of a capacity problem. So I'm going out of the different ways. It's not like just get, right? It's like, less of a capacity problem, because now we are slimming down. We're streamlining the throughput of information from all the possible inputs and where they come from to one singular inbox. And that inbox is it is self-sorting, so that it actually never gets too much information. So that's the thing. That's a different loop. It's like, we can get big. No, we're actually sorting and slimming down to amount of information that matters, and that's what will enable us to have the felt sense of more spaciousness in order to be able to process the things that are coming to us. I'll give you an example. I have not read the news since election day. And it's not that I've not heard a thing. I've heard a thing. Folks have said a thing. It's enough. I know enough about what's going on and what's possible. And I made the determination, I made the determination that that's not the information that I need in order to allow a different story to unfold, the story that I want to live into and that we want to live into. I don't need much more information at this time. I may, but maybe I do after January or February, but at this moment, I don't need more information. I need to get really clear about what it is that is I am called to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch this conversation a couple times. This idea of slimming down as opposed to kind of like, building capacity. It's a slowing down of sorts.
Yes.
And yeah.
It's capacity building, but it's capacity. But you can say, I have a lot of stuff in my room, right? I need a bigger room. Or you can say, I can get all of the things that are in this room that I don't need out of this room.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. That's it.
Yeah.
But I don't need all these things that are in this room.
Exactly.
That's it. And I have to be, I have a lot of habits that got me to accumulating the things in this room. So I slow down enough to like feel each thing. I pick it up and I hold it, right? Marie Kondo style. I go, right? Do I need this? There's no juice in this. I don't need that. All right. Like I put that down. And then I put that down. And then I find myself picking the thing up, because I have a habit of picking it up. And so that's what the slow enough, right? It's like slow enough to really start to feel, so that we're just like, oh yeah, I know what it feels like to know what is true for me.
Yeah.
So we're building capacity, but we're not building capacity with acquisition and capitalist mindset.
Mm-hmm.
More.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much there. I wanted to take advantage of this moment, this platform, to let the community know about the healing race portals that you've been working on.
Yeah.
From my vantage point, it's capacity building on a on a multi-generational ancestral level. So just wanted to make sure I took the moment to invite you just to share a little bit about the healing race portals, because I know that we want to make sure that it gets funded and supported in some significant ways.
Yeah, so my first book was called Being Black, Zen and the Art of Living with Fearlessness and Grace. And the very last chapter actually became the opening chapter of Radical Dharma, talking race, love, and liberation. So follow the whole through line, and 25 years to the nickel. Really, it is all of my work, and all of the work of my ancestors, and all of the work of your ancestors, and everyone to be free, that gave me a little bit of an insight to build into, to architect what I call the Healing Race Portal. It is an experience. There's more words. You can go to healingraceportal.com to learn about the Healing Race Portal. And what I will say is, speaking about capacity, what it does is it helps us to allow the body to heal from the generational, ancestral, epigenetic, allostatic, negative load of racialization upon our bodies. And it does that within a alchemical but singular experience, meaning not over many, many years, but it opens a portal into the possibility of healing, and it unleashes what we call an autolytic, right? Like self-cleaning process, where the wounds of racialization are cleansed or debrided, for some medical terminology. So we're not healing space. We are creating an opportunity to pause the amount of constancy of offense to our bodies and to our beings for just long enough for our body to remember its innate capacity for healing, so that it can take over and to begin that. And we have a campaign going for funding our way to an experience in which we're going to invite people with very large dollar capacity to experience it so they can help us get to the $12 million that we are headed towards, but we're seeking to raise $500,000, $600,000 right now through a peer-to-peer campaign. And you can go to revangel.com/healrace to get involved and become. And the only reason you shouldn't be involved is if you don't want to heal race. That's what I'll end it.
Let's be clear. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you for letting me share that. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. I want to kind of close this out. I think there's going to have to be a part 2 of this conversation. And there were 2 things I wanted to talk to you more about, but I'll just stick with one. And it's kind of in connection to the Healing Race portal, but more about your experience through that journey of yours. And it's somewhat connected to capacity building, but more uniquely associated with your relationship to citizenship. Like, what does it mean? I've always thought about you and have been struck and always want to talk to you about, like, how you feel about being an American, and a particular kind of American that has such a variety of experiences, from entrepreneurs and priestess, activists, and so many other things. But your Blackness, and now that when so much is swirling at us, in particular in the U.S. with an administration that is often hostile to people and to cultures that represent where we come from. But regardless of that, I'm wondering just how your experiences with Healing Race have shaped your relationship to your citizenship of this particular territory.
Yeah. That's good. I also, I'm big on complexity. So it's complex. I am, when I went to Kenya some years ago, I went to Kenya and I was with Black folks, and I'd never seen that many Black folks in my life. And I had been in the Caribbean, but I was like, wow, there's a lot of Black folks, and they're empowered, like all the things. And I was struck with, I am an American. I am African heritage, but I am an American culturally. My cultural orientation, my expectations, my shaping, et cetera, and so on. I carry an American passport, and the power of an American passport, where there were things. I was in Istanbul when there was bombing began, and I got privileged in a way that was specific to the fact that I hold an American passport. That said, I don't have and when Obama became president, I actually wrote an essay called Finally American. I actually felt for the first time like, I can be connected to this notion of being an American. And for whatever that's worth, I'll just leave that at that. That said, I don't believe in boundaries, the kind of nation state boundaries. And I think that they are the source of great devastation, upon the planet. And we have done so much harm in and to ourselves and to this mother as a result of notions of citizenship. And then if you're going to be inside the citizenship, let me say this, and Obama, I'm looking at you. The Constitution that we have. So I have a book that I've been holding on to for years because I thought like, we're not ready for this book. And now I think we're ready for this book. And the book's called New America. And while it's talking about America, it is actually talking about a global order and the way that we order ourselves globally and planetarily. We will never survive the interpretation of the current Constitution of these United States of America. And so if we do not have a new Constitution, if we don't rewrite the Constitution, much less a two-party system that forces us into oppositional relationships with one another and amongst one another, we simply, especially those of us that are Black, that are queer, that are trans, that are poor, that you could be white and poor. This country was not designed for most of us. And we see it in the snapbacks in the political chicanery and mechanistic things that are going on right now. So I see that actually as a populist movement. I don't see that as a Black thing. I don't think about a left thing. I don't think it's a progressive thing. I think it is an evolutionary thing for human beings that are tired of trying to figure out, how do we be at each other's throat, or how do I defend myself from someone else being at my throat all the time? And I think that we can get tired of that as human beings. We're not meant to hold that. And so our essential sense of connection will remind us that we are citizens of the planet, and that we need to be good citizens of the planet. And that politically speaking, one of those things begins with, in this nation state, United States, that it begins with constructing a constitution that includes space, voice, collective, by way of collective process, that has room for all of us, that isn't going to solve all of our problems, but at the very least, we're not relegating ourselves to the interpretations of what I like to call that old rag. That old rag that essentially says that I've either your food or I'm food.
Mm. Mm. Thank you for that, Red. Thank you so much. Thank you much for your time as well. This is a little teaser for the community in terms of your brilliance and just the power of thinking about your work through the lens of capacity building. So on behalf of the team and the participants, just thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it so much.